Lean back. Let the room around you flatten into quiet, no harsh edges. Only the soft halo of a lamp or the dim glow of your screen. Breathe slow. Tonight, I'm going to lead you across old radio waves and midnight roads, into stories the headlines left out and the public record forgot. This is not the shouted, sensational listicle of aliens do exist, nor the hoarse, paranoid mutterings of late-night forums. This is a lullaby for the lost lights, gentle, patient, and strange, meant to soothe the mind as it opens to something that both unsettles and comforts. We'll travel small through towns that don't exist on tourist maps, past gas stations that never changed their neon since 1978, into deserts that fold into themselves like old maps. You'll hear voices recorded in garages, the soft clack of typewriter keys from a reporter who stopped believing what she was told, the hush of a lonely lighthouse camera when clouds pass over a moon-thin sky. These are encounters the media ignored, not because they were uninteresting, but because they refused to convert into tidy categories. Not hoaxes exactly. Not the kind of proof the networks could sell between commercials. They were messy human. They felt like dreams that lingered on waking, and for that reason they were shelved. Picture Mara, who used to file small-town obituaries and ended up keeping a drawer of audio tapes. They smelled faintly of dust and lemon oil. Picture Elias, a night shift technician at the Salt Lake Telemetry Array who knows the difference between a migratory flock and a signal that seems to hum with intention. Picture Dr. Noor, an astrophysicist who treats the sky like a ledger. She has numbers, but she reads them with tenderness. And picture Rahim, a long-haul trucker who saw 3 lights hover over a highway bridge and thought of nothing but the song his mother used to hum, so ordinary a memory it made the lights more impossible. These people do not exist as catchy headlines. They live in the gutters between official statements and forgetfulness. They keep records on hard drives named things like Miss 2002 and Not For Public. They pass cigarette lighters and watch the sky. They trade stories in the amber light of diners at 2 in the morning, where the coffee is thick and the vinyl booths creak like folding songbirds. A waitress once whispered to Mara that the townspeople had always called the phenomenon the third chime, a sound that comes after normality, the space on a clock when something else arrives. What we'll hear are the small things that persist after the big networks move on. A voicemail left at 3:12 a.m. with a voice so calm it felt rehearsed. A child's crayon drawing stapled to an elementary school bulletin board, showing a ship like a silver pebble. A lighthouse logbook entry that reads, in a single, understated line, lights circled, no vessels observed. The language of these records is plain because those who keep them are still trying to sleep, still trying to explain to themselves what they saw. You should know the rules of listening. Keep your eyes softened. Let the sentences fall the way water does over smooth stone. If a description startle you, let it be small and brief like a moth that taps the window. Rather than a hurricane, I'll pace it slow, so your heartbeat has room to expand and settle. The goal is not to unsettle and flee, but to be haunted in a friendly way, to leave the ordinary world slightly rearranged, as if a piece of furniture has been nudged to reveal an old photograph underneath. There is an archive in this story, though not in the bureaucratic, bristling sense. It is a cabinet of things people kept because they could not bear to throw them away. A reel-to-reel tape with a single, repeated frequency. A Polaroid taken in a motel parking lot at 2:07 a.m. with 4 white dots that a jury of experienced eyes could not place. A child's factual sketch of a being with too many joints and the word please scribbled under it. None of these images need to be proof. Proof would be loud and irrefutable and would sell very well. What we have instead is texture, the small, human fabric of testimony. The world we will build together in these chapters is less concerned with answers than with attention. It is the attention given to the night shift operator who felt something register on his monitor, like a fingertip on the back of his neck. The attention the astronomer gives to a light that drifts in the same pattern as a known satellite, but wears, inexplicably, a rhythm. There will be no tidy exposition where a scientist pronounces a final word and the credits roll. Instead, we will linger at kettle heat and the low hum of distant traffic. listening to how people rearrange their lives around a secret scene once and impossible to unsee. Listen now, not with the demand to classify, but with the curiosity of someone who finds a half-forgotten song in an attic and wants to know who used to dance to it. Imagine the soundscape, cicadas like static, the soft hiss of a recorder, the low crackle of radio static that sometimes becomes language. Imagine the smell of ozone after a strange storm, the metallic taste of anticipation. The way a phone will vibrate in your pocket with a message you won't answer immediately, because you don't quite trust what will happen if you do. Tonight's first story is soft measured. It begins with an unlabeled file that Mara found under a false bottom in an old filing cabinet. The paper brittle like a leaf. The file contained a cassette and a note, play only at night. Mara laughed when she read the note, then she waited for a night when the house felt especially large and the wind outside carried a kind of low, mournful bell tone. She threaded the cassette into a player that clicked like a satisfied insect and pressed play. At first there was only silence, and then a frequency like a throat clearing far away. The sound crawled across the speakers like distant surf. Then, unmistakably, a voice, not raised, not theatrical, only a woman saying one line in a language Mara did not know, followed by the part that made every hair on her arm stand upright, a perfectly ordinary lullaby, hummed in small, exact notes that seemed shaped to fit the inside of the ear. The recorder clipped at the edges. For 5 seconds there was a sound like ocean on glass. For 1 second, the hum stopped. Then something moved like a door opening in the dark of the room and the cassette recorded it. Soft and unmistakable. 3 deliberate knocks, each with the exact spacing of the third chime. Mara rewound and played it again. The sound was the same. The lullaby hummed on a second track beneath it, as if the times of existence had decided to whisper at once. She pressed stop, and the house felt like a throat with something caught in it. She slept badly that night, the way someone sleeps after a dream that foretells a day. I will not press you into disbelief or faith. I will only set the scene, warm and slow, like a bath. When you are ready for the first part where that cassette meets a desert highway, and to people who shouldn't meet each other find that a single small object reopens a world, you can tell me part 1, and we will step through the door together. But before you let your eyes close, listen to the last thing the tape gave Mara, a voice, low and near, that said without urgency, with the soft intimacy of someone revealing a recipe, "You slept through us once. We stayed because you asked us to." Then the recorder filled with a noise like the sky being rubbed by a hand, and the tape ended. Outside, somewhere beyond the town and the salt pans, a light moved that did not belong to any constellation. It did not demand attention. It waited. The desert highway was a kind of ocean. Miles stretched out in rippling black, heat from the day still steaming faintly from the asphalt, though the night air had already cooled. The hum of cicadas clung to the sagebrush like static on an old radio, and every so often, the silhouette of a coyote moved like smoke against the pale horizon. Out here, the sky pressed down so vast that the road felt less like a path and more like a thread sewn across an endless dark fabric. Elias drove this road often. His truck, a faithful, scar Peterbilt, was his companion more than any person had been for years. He was a long-haul driver who'd grown used to hours of silence, broken only by the low rhythm of country stations that crackled out somewhere past midnight. But tonight was different. Tonight, his cargo wasn't just crates. Tonight, he carried Mara. Mara sat in the passenger seat, clutching a small plastic cassette case in her lap. Her fingers worried the edges until the brittle corners bit into her skin. She hadn't planned to be here, hadn't planned to say yes when Elias asked if she needed a lift. She was a reporter ordeused to be her career reduced to whispers of what she once tried to publish. The cassette was all she had left that proved the world wasn't as empty as it seemed. The hum of the truck masked the tension between them. Elias had picked her up outside a diner 3 towns back. He hadn't asked questions when he saw the way she stared at the sky, her coffee untouched, her notebook filled with sketches of orbits and timestamps. But once they were on the highway, with nothing but stars to keep them company, he finally said what had been on his mind since she climbed aboard. "What's on that tape?" he asked. His voice was slow, gentle, like someone speaking to a skittish animal. Mara didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the cassette case, the tiny spools of tape visible through the clear window. A voice, she said softly, "Not human. At least, not anymore." Elias let the answer sit in the cab like a third passenger. He didn't laugh. He didn't tease. He only tightened his grip on the steering wheel and kept his gaze on the dotted white lines flashing beneath his headlights. "I've seen things," Elias said finally. "Lights, once, over a bridge near Amarillo. Thought I was tired. Thought maybe I dozed. But they didn't move like planes. They didn't move like anything I've ever seen." Mara turned her head slowly, studying him. His face was weathered, lined from years of sun and miles of road. He didn't look like the type to make things up. That mattered to her more than she expected. "This tape," she said, lifting it slightly, "is the only thing that kept me from thinking I'd lost my mind. Someone recorded something, a lullaby, and then knocks. 3 of them, like a signal." Elias's brow furrowed. "You've listened to it?" "Too many times," Mara whispered. "It feels like it's listening back." Silence fell again, thicker than before. The road unfurled like ribbon, and above them, the stars seemed unnaturally sharp, as though someone had polished the sky. Elias reached to turn the radio dial, but the speakers only spat out bursts of static, then silence. He frowned and tried again. Still nothing. "That's odd," he muttered. Mara pressed the cassette case closer to her chest. "They know," she said quietly. "Whenever the tape is near, signals die. Radios, phones, even cameras. It's like it eats electricity, just a little." A low rumble echoed outside. At first, Elias thought it was a storm forming beyond the hills, but the sky was clear. Then he saw it, 3 lights hanging low over the desert, bright and silent. They were too steady to be aircraft, too close to be stars. His stomach tightened. Mara followed his gaze. The lights pulsed once, faintly, as though acknowledging they were seen. Then they began to move, first in a straight line, then in a perfect triangle. The shape held for a breathless moment before the lights broke apart, each streaking in a different direction, faster than any jet could manage. Neither of them spoke. The truck kept rolling, but the air inside the cab had changed. It felt heavier, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Finally, Elias exhaled. "So," he said, forcing calm into his voice, "that's what you meant." Mara nodded. Her grip on the cassette tightened. "And that's only the beginning. They never show themselves without a reason," as if to answer her. The truck's dashboard lights flickered once, then went out entirely. The engine coughed, stuttered, and died. The Peterbilt rolled to a slow, reluctant stop in the middle of the highway, swallowed by darkness. The only light came from the stars, and faintly, from somewhere ahead, a glow, low to the ground. Not white or yellow, but the pale blue of gas flame. Mara's breath hitched. "It's happening again." Elias reached instinctively for the ignition, but the key refused to turn. The cab was silent except for the sound of their breathing. And then 3 sharp knocks. Not on the cassette, not on the dashboard, but on the outside of the truck door. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed across the desert, unnatural in its clarity. Elias and Mara froze. Neither dared to move. Neither dared to speak. The glow ahead brightened, and the knocking stopped. In its place came a low hum, like a lullaby played on strings too vast for human hands. And as the sound grew closer, the cassette case in Mara's hands began to tremble. The desert held its breath. Elias could feel the silence press against the windows of the truck as if the whole world had leaned in to listen. His heartbeat was suddenly too loud inside his chest. The glow ahead, pale, bluish, steady, was not fire, not headlights, not anything he'd seen in all his years driving highways at night. Mara's hands trembled as she set the cassette down on the dashboard. The little plastic case clicked against the vinyl, vibrating faintly with the same rhythm as the low hum outside. It was as though the tape had found its tuning fork, a frequency to answer. "Don't move," she whispered. Elias wanted to scoff at that, wanted to say he wasn't about to leap out into the desert in the middle of some whatever this was. But her tone silenced him. It wasn't fear so much as recognition, as if she'd been here before. The glow had shifted. Not closer, not farther. It seemed to pulse in place, breathing with a patience that was unsettling. The hum threaded into Elias's bones, low and steady, like the vibration of a cathedral organ. His teeth ached with it. "Why is it here?" Elias asked under his breath. Mara didn't answer right away. She tilted her head, as if listening to something Elias couldn't hear. Finally, she said, "It waits for permission." The words chilled him more than the desert night air. Permission? From who? From them? Or from her? Without warning, the truck's radio clicked alive. No hands had touched it, yet the speakers hissed with static, sharp enough to sting the ears. Then a voice emerged, faint and fractured, as if buried under layers of sand. "You slept through us once." Mara's eyes widened. She lunged for the cassette case, clutching it tight to her chest. "That's the voice," she whispered. "From the tape." Elias swallowed hard. "It's broadcasting?" "No," she said. Her eyes reflected the bluish glow. "It's answering." The hum outside deepened, and the glow began to rise. Slowly, impossibly, it lifted from the ground, hovering at the height of a small building. The desert around it remained unchanged, no wind, no dust, no sound of engines. Just a pale, impossible lantern floating in the night. Elias's hands itched to turn the ignition again, but some part of him knew the truck would not obey. He could feel the machine's stubborn stillness, as if every bolt had been commanded to wait. The voice on the radio continued, clearer now, though broken by long silences. "Knock once. If you still. Remember, knock twice. If you refuse, knock three. If you are ready." Mara closed her eyes. Her breath shook, her knuckles white around the cassette. "It's the same message. Every time. What happens if we answer?" Elias asked. She didn't reply. The glow began to move again, slow, deliberate arcs across the sky, as if drawing shapes only it understood. The triangle it made earlier, Elias realized, wasn't random. It was a pattern, a language. 3 knocks, Mara said at last. Her voice was heavy, resigned. "It's always been about the 3rd chime." Before Elias could question her further, the knocking returned. This time, it wasn't on the truck door. It came from the roof, 3 steady raps that echoed through the cab. Knock, knock, knock. Elias's scalp prickled. He fought the urge to bolt out of the seat. He looked at Mara, expecting panic. Instead, she was weeping silently, tears shining on her cheeks. "They've been waiting for someone to answer," she whispered. "All these years." The glow hovered closer now, no longer patient but insistent. The hum grew louder, resonating with the cassette until it rattled in her hands. Elias covered his ears, but the sound sank deeper, into his chest, into his ribs, and then silence. Complete and total. The glow froze in place. The hum cut out as if switched off. The desert became so quiet Elias swore he could hear the blood moving in his veins. On the radio, the voice whispered one last phrase. "Doors open." The truck's headlights flared back to life, flooding the road in harsh white. The engine roared as if it had never died. But ahead, the highway no longer stretched endlessly into the horizon. Instead, the glow had carved something impossible into the air, a shape, circular and shifting. Like a mirror made of liquid light. It stood across the road. Waiting. Mara turned toward Elias, her eyes dark with both terror and awe. "That's not a light," she said softly. "It's a passage." The hum returned, faint but steady, urging. Elias's grip tightened on the wheel. The road forward was no longer a road at all. And somewhere inside the cab, though neither of them had touched it, the cassette clicked and began to play. The cassette's warbled hiss filled the truck cab, the lullaby threading faintly through static. Elias froze, one hand on the wheel, the other hovering near the ignition key as if he could stop this by sheer force of will. But the tape played on, its gentle, haunting melody far too steady for something so old, outside. The glowing circle shimmered across the highway like a hole punched into reality. Its edges bled with soft ripples of blue, like heat waves rising from asphalt. It wasn't just light. It was depth and opening, waiting. Mara clutched the cassette player, her lips trembling. "It's real," she whispered. "It's really real." Elias's throat tightened. Lady, I don't know what kind of mess you've dragged me into, but that, he pointed to the circle. That's not normal. That's not safe. Mara shook her head, almost smiling through her tears. Normal was the lie. This is what's been there all along. No one wanted to see it. The lullaby continued, now layered with faint knocks. 1, 2, 3 synchronized with the glows pulsing. Elias felt his body vibrate in tune, like a string pulled taut. His instincts screamed to turn the truck around, to flee into the comforting monotony of empty miles. But something stronger held him, a pull, soft and insistent. Like gravity from another world, the glow brightened, and suddenly, the entire cab of the truck filled with the scent of ozone, sharp, electric, metallic. Elias coughed, eyes watering. Mara inhaled deeply, as though the smell was proof she had long been waiting for. Drive forward. She said. What? Elias snapped his head toward her. Drive into it, she repeated, calm despite the tears streaking her face. That's why it's here. For us. Elias barked out a laugh, rough and panicked. Lady, I've hauled through ice storms and tornado warnings, and I've never once aimed this truck at something that looks like it'll chew us up and spit us out into nothing. But the wheel was trembling under his hands. Not violently, not forcing him, but coaxing, as if the Peterbilt itself wanted to obey. Mara's voice softened. You said you've seen them before. Lights over Amarillo, right? You thought it was a dream. You thought you'd imagine it. But this is the part they never show, the doorway. Her words sank into him, stirring something buried deep. He remembered that night on the bridge, 3 lights hovering soundlessly. His mother's song echoing in his mind, the inexplicable tears that burned his eyes. He told himself it was exhaustion, a trick of the dark. Yet here, now, the same hum curled through his bones, undeniable. The radio crackled again. The voice returned clearer than before, smooth and almost tender. You are ready. The door waits. Mara turned to Elias, her gaze steady. It won't open again for us if we refuse. Not like this. Not together. Elias's jaw clenched. Every fiber of him screamed against it. Yet some hidden corner whispered that turning away would be worse, that to deny this moment would leave him haunted forever. The circle pulsed brighter, a heartbeat of light. The lullaby rose in pitch, almost beckoning. Elias cursed under his breath, slammed the truck into gear, and pressed his foot to the accelerator. The Peterbilt roared forward. The circle loomed, expanding until it filled the windshield with pure, impossible brilliance. The hum swelled, rattling their teeth, pressing into their lungs. Mara gripped the cassette as if it were an anchor. Elias kept his eyes locked ahead, refusing to blink. And then impact, except there was no crash. No shatter of glass or tearing of steel. Instead, the cab dissolved into light. The steering wheel vanished beneath Elias's hands. The dashboard melted into brightness. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but weightlessness. Like falling without direction. Then dash silence. The light receded, and the truck was gone. Elias and Mara found themselves standing, not sitting. Not inside the cab, but on solid ground that glowed faintly beneath their feet. Above them stretched not a sky, but a dome, vast, luminous, and alive with constellations that shifted like ink in water. Shapes moved there, colossal silhouettes drifting soundlessly across a horizon that bent in ways the eyes struggled to comprehend. Elias stumbled back, disoriented. The ground hummed like glass, yet supported him firmly. His chest ached from holding his breath. Where the hell are we? Mara's expression was rapt, awestruck. We're through, she whispered. We're inside. The cassette player in her hands was still running. The tape spun silently, though no sound emerged. Then, with a click, it stopped, and in the stillness, a new sound echoed around them, a voice. Not from the radio, not from the cassette, but from everywhere at once. It was deep, layered, and resonant, as if the stars themselves had spoken. Welcome back. Mara's knees buckled, and she nearly dropped the tape. Elias caught her arm, his own heart hammering. Back? Elias whispered. What do you mean, back? The stars above shifted, swirling into the shape of an immense eye, vast, radiant, unblinking. It focused downward, and though no malice touched it, Elias felt stripped bare under its gaze. You have always known, the voice said. You asked? We answered. The third chime returns you. Elias's breath came fast and shallow. This isn't real. I'm dreaming. I've got to be dreaming. But Mara's hand tightened on his sleeve. Her eyes wide with something between fear and devotion. No, she whispered. This is real. And they've been waiting for us. The ground beneath them shivered. And from the horizon, figures began to emerge tall. Graceful silhouettes moving in silence, their outlines shimmering as though made of shifting air. The first one stepped closer. Its presence alone bent the light around it. Elias took a step back. Mara took a step forward. The voice echoed again, this time softer. Intimate, do you remember the lullaby? Mara nodded, tears spilling freely. Yes, she whispered. I remember. The figure raised a hand, or something like one. The dome's constellations brightened, and the hum returned gentle, coaxing. Like a cradle rocking in the void, Elias's stomach churned. Whatever lay ahead, he knew, was not something either of them could turn away from. And then the figure spoke not aloud, but inside their minds. Clear and precise, the door closes soon. Choose. The glowing dome above pulsed as though it had heard the word choose echo in Elias's mind. The shifting constellations slowed, each star pausing in its orbit until the sky itself seemed to hold its breath. The tall figures approached, their outlines bending reality like heat over asphalt. Elias fought to steady his breathing. He had stood face to face with tornado walls, black ice, and engines on fire. But nothing had ever twisted his gut like this. They weren't charging at him, weren't hostile. They simply existed, and their very existence pushed at the edges of sanity. Mara, though, stepped toward them with something like reverence. Her tears glimmered in the dome's glow. They're the same, she whispered. The same as the ones I heard on the tape. The lullaby wasn't a recording at all. It was a memory. Elias shook his head, backing up. No, lady, you don't know what these things are. We don't know what they want. The nearest figure tilted, a ripple of light along its edges. Then the voice, deep, layered, impossible, filled their minds again. We are not new. We are not strangers. We are the echo you called for when you were small. We are the ones who waited. The words weren't spoken in any human tongue, but they carried a warmth that brushed against Elias's defenses. The cadence of the message almost rocked him, like a story told to a child half asleep. Mara's lips parted in awe. I knew it, she breathed. I knew they weren't hostile. They've been trying to reach us, to guide us. But Elias noticed something Mara did not. As the beings stepped closer, their forms flickered half there, half not. They stretched too long, bent at strange angles, their shapes collapsing into patterns that hurt his eyes. It was beautiful, yes, but also unbearable. The second figure spoke, its voice carrying a vibration that shook the ground under their feet. We waited because you asked us to wait, but your world forgot the asking. Your kind hid the memory in drawers, in tapes, in whispers. Still, we did not leave. The cassette in Mara's hand clicked suddenly, the reel spinning backward with no power source, unwinding until the tape inside sagged loose. A strange pressure filled the air, as though the dome itself leaned closer to hear. Mara clutched the cassette tighter, her voice trembling. That's why it felt like it was listening. Because it was. They were holding the memory in place all this time. Elias rubbed his temples, the hum sinking into his bones. Why us? He muttered. Why here? Why now? The first figure's outline rippled, and with it came the answer. Because you still remember the third chime. Few do. Fewer choose. You opened the door. The path is yours. The word choose repeated in Elias's skull like a bell strike. Mara turned to him, her eyes wide, imploring. Don't you see? They're offering us something. Not everyone gets this. Not everyone can step through. We're chosen. Elias felt his throat tighten. Chosen. The word curdled inside him. He had spent his life running roads nobody remembered, carting crates across miles of forgettable nothing. He hadn't been chosen for anything in decades. And now this? Aliens or whatever they were telling him he'd been marked out for some grand, incomprehensible design? The dome flickered again. This time, it wasn't patient. Stars flared brighter. constellations rearranging themselves into a vast pattern Elias didn't recognize in alignment. That pulsed like a countdown. The third figure spoke, and his voice was sharper, less soothing. The door does not wait forever. If you step forward, you become. If you turn back, you forget. Decide. The words cracked through the space like thunder. Elias staggered at their force. Mara, though, looked resolute. She stepped forward, lifting the cassette high like an offering. Her voice trembled, but her conviction did not. I choose to remember. I choose to go with you. The beings pulsed in unison, their outlines shimmering brighter. The lullaby returned soft, coaxing, and the dome's constellation swirled faster, aligning above her as though crowning her choice. Elias felt panic crawl through his chest. His every instinct screamed to drag Mara back, to run toward whatever counted as an exit, to never look up at that impossible eye of stars again. But when he tried to move, his legs refused. The hum had rooted him in place, demanding his answer. He realized with growing dread that there was no neutral ground here, no watching safely from the sidelines. The choice was already his. Mara turned to him, her tears shining, her voice urgent. Come with me, Elias. Don't let the fear take you. We're standing at the edge of something bigger than all the lies we've lived under. Don't you want to know the truth? Her words hit him deep. He did want to know. God, he'd always wanted to know. Every restless night on the highway, every unanswered sighting, every memory of lights above Amarillo, it had all gnawed at him. But knowing meant stepping into something that might never let him go. The figures loomed, their voices rising together in a chorus that shook the dome. Step or forget. The ground beneath them split faintly, a seam of white light opening like a wound. Mara stood poised over it, ready to leap. Elias's body shook as the choice pressed down on him like gravity. The lullaby rose higher, more insistent. Mara looked at him one last time. Elias, choose. And with that, she stepped forward into the light. Elias gasped, reaching instinctively, his hand brushing hers for the briefest instant. Her fingers were warm, real, human, and then gone. She vanished into the brilliance, swallowed whole. The dome quaked. The beings turned their unblinking focus on him, and the seam of light yawned wider at his feet. The seam of light stretched wider beneath Elias's boots, spilling brilliance across the ground like liquid fire. It pulsed with each beat of his racing heart, threatening to swallow him whole if he lingered too long. Above, the dome spun faster, stars streaking into arcs of silver, constellations collapsing into shapes no human eye was meant to name. The beings loomed closer, their voices layered and relentless. The same message repeated like the tolling of a bell. Step or forget. Elias's knees shook. His breath came shallow and fast, his chest constricted by the weight of a decision too large for one man. Mara's face, those wide, tear-streaked eyes burned in his memory. She had chosen without hesitation. She'd stepped into the unknown as though she were returning home. But Elias was not Mara. He was a man of roads and engines, of grit under his fingernails and logbooks filled with mileage. He wasn't a seeker. He wasn't a believer. He was tired, and yet he remembered. The night on the Amarillo Bridge. The three lights hovering, silent, patient. The song his mother used to hum drifting unbidden into his head. He had buried it under years of work and silence, but the memory had never left. It lived in him like a splinter, aching whenever he tried too hard to forget. He clenched his fists. What happens if I choose to forget? His voice cracked in the vastness. The first figure leaned forward, its outline bending the air around it. Its reply was soft, almost merciful. The door closes. The road resumes. The memory fades. You will live, and you will die, and the lights will no longer trouble you. Elias swallowed hard. That sounded like peace. A return to the simple, endless rhythm of diesel and highways, of truck stops and coffee and the lonely stars overhead. A life where he could tell himself nothing had ever happened. But the second figure spoke, sharper. Like a knife against glass, peace is not truth. Forgetting is erasure. You will not only lose us, you will lose yourself. The piece of you that remembers will vanish. You will become hollow. The word hollow echoed through the dome, and Elias felt the warning lodge deep in his chest. He looked down again at the seam of light. It wasn't empty. Shapes moved within it, fragments of landscapes, half-formed visions. A desert folded into an ocean, a city of towers gleaming with liquid glass. Faces both human and not. For a moment, he thought he saw Mara, suspended in the glow. Her hand outstretched as though reaching back for him. Elias. The voice was hers, clear, beckoning. His throat closed, tears stinging his eyes. Mara? But then her face dissolved, swallowed by the current of shifting forms. The third figure spoke now, its voice vibrating so deep it rattled Elias's bones. You are already bound by the third chime. You cannot remain unchosen. Step forward, or the forgetting will tear you apart. The ground beneath him trembled. The seam widened further, cracks of light spidering outward as though reality itself couldn't hold the weight of indecision. Elias dropped to one knee, clutching the glowing surface. His mind spun. He wanted to live. He wanted his truck, his road, the simple monotony of ordinary nights. But he also wanted answers. He wanted to know if those nights in Amarillo had meant something. He wanted the truth that Mara had thrown herself into. The lullaby returned, softer now, almost tender, like a hand brushing his hair. The same melody his mother had hummed when he was a boy. Elias gasped, his chest heaving. This wasn't coincidence. It was connection. It had always been there. His hand hovered over the seam. The beings waited. Silent now, patient but unwavering, he whispered to himself. To the lights, to Mara, maybe even to his mother's ghost. If I go through, there's no going back, is there? The silence was answer enough. The seam flared, brilliant and blinding. The lullaby swelled. And Elias, trembling, afraid, and yet unable to turn away, finally stepped into the light. For an instant, there was nothing. Then everything. Light engulfed him, not warm, not cold, but infinite. His body dissolved into sensation, sound, color, memory, all unraveling and reweaving at once. He saw Mara again, but not as she was. He saw her as a child, drawing stars in a notebook. He saw her listening to the cassette for the first time, her face pale in the lamplight. He saw her now, radiant, walking ahead of him into the brilliance, and then he saw himself, driving endless miles, staring at skies that never gave answers, always searching, never admitting it, always waiting for something he could never name. The light folded around him, whispering not with words, but with knowing. You are no longer waiting. And just as the brilliance threatened to swallow him whole, Elias felt the ground return beneath his feet. He staggered forward onto a surface smooth as glass, and the dome above had changed. It was no longer a sky of shifting constellations. It was a vast city, luminous and alive, stretching into horizons his eyes couldn't measure. Towers like frozen lightning reached upward, and between them moved figures both alien and familiar, flowing like shadows through rivers of light. Mara stood a few paces ahead, her face lit with awe. She turned to him, smiling through tears. You chose, she whispered. Elias swallowed, his voice rough. God help me, I did. From behind them, the seam closed with a final pulse of brilliance. The choice was sealed. There was no road back. And somewhere in the luminous city ahead, something vast stirred, something that had been waiting far longer than either of them could comprehend. The air was alive. Elias felt it ripple against his skin, humming like invisible strings drawn tight across the vast city. The towers before him stretched impossibly high, translucent and flowing, as though made from both crystal and storm clouds. They bent light in strange directions, refracting entire galaxies in their surfaces. Beneath his boots, the ground pulsed faintly, a lattice of glowing pathways stretching into the horizon. Every step he took sent tiny waves of light outward, like drops of water on a still pond. Mara walked ahead, her hand brushing the air as if to test its texture. Her voice was low, trembling but awestruck. They're not buildings. They're alive. Elias squinted at the nearest tower. Its surface wasn't solid. It shifted with slow, deliberate motion, like the side of some titanic creature breathing. The realization made his stomach tighten. Cities didn't breathe. A murmur rose around them. Shapes emerged from the light beings like the ones from the dome. But here they moved more freely, unbound by ritual or command. Their bodies were semi-formed, outlines bending and reforming as though they existed only partially in this place. Faces flickered in their contours, human faces, alien faces, some unrecognizable. All dissolving too quickly for certainty, the whispers began. Not sound, but thought pressed gently into Elias's mind. Welcome to the Echo. He froze. Mara, too, stopped in her tracks, eyes widening. She had heard it as well. Echo? Elias asked aloud, his voice sounding small against the enormity of the city. Not city, not home. A reflection, a weave of memory and matter. You walk inside the archive of all who chose. Mara gasped. The archive of those who stepped into the light. Elias's throat went dry. He looked around again at the flowing towers, the glowing pathways, the whispering figures that moved like fragments of dream. He felt suddenly aware of every breath, every beat of his heart. If this was an archive, then whose lives filled it? They walked deeper, guided by a current they could not see but could feel pulling them forward. The pathways branched endlessly, yet their steps always fell in the right place, as if the ground itself carried intention. At intervals, great plumes of light rose from the streets, forming shapes, memories. Elias watched one unfold, a farmhouse under an old sky, a woman standing in her doorway while strange lights circled above her fields. The vision flickered, then dissolved into motes of silver drifting upward like ash. Mara reached for Elias's hand, squeezing hard. Her voice was hushed, reverent. Their lives, every person who's ever been touched by them. Another plume rose nearby. This time Elias saw a boy no older than 12, staring from a rooftop as 3 glowing orbs hovered silently overhead. The boy's wide eyes glistened with wonder. Then the vision shattered into sparks, vanishing into the air. Elias whispered, almost to himself, "These are the stories no one believed." Mara nodded, tears clinging to her lashes. The media ignored them, but they're here. All of them. They pressed onward. The city grew denser, the towers bending closer together until their surfaces brushed, sending ripples of light across each other like waves colliding. The hum in the air grew louder, pressing against Elias's chest. Finally, they reached a vast courtyard where the pathways converged. At its center rose a monument of light, a swirling sphere larger than any building, its surface alive with billions of shifting faces. Human, alien, indistinct, tall, interwoven into a living tapestry. The whispers converged into a single, resonant voice. You have chosen to join the echo. You carry fragments within you. You will give, and you will receive. Elias's knees weakened under the weight of it. The sphere pulsed, and images poured into his mind unbidden, flashes of unknown skies. Languages made of light, hands reaching across impossible distances. It was too much, too fast. His body trembled, heart hammering. Mara steadied him, her own eyes blazing with reflected brilliance. Don't fight it. Let it through. He tried. The torrent slowed, threads of memory weaving into something more bearable. He saw his own life mirrored within it, his childhood under empty skies, the Amarillo Bridge, the endless roads where he chased horizons that never answered back. And he saw, with aching clarity, how those roads had led him here. Mara's voice broke through the storm. Elias, do you see? We're part of it. We've always been. The great sphere shuddered, and the voice deepened. But choice is not complete. To remain within the echo, you must surrender. A thread of yourself must be woven into the archive. Without it, you will not endure this place. Elias stiffened. Surrender? What? The answer was not cruel, but neither was it kind. Memory, a piece of what you are. To walk forward, you must give something you cannot reclaim. Mara's grip on his hand tightened. Her face was pale, her breath uneven. It's the price. The ones before us, they gave part of themselves to stay. That's why their echoes live here. Elias shook his head, panic flaring. If I give them something, I won't be me anymore. The voice answered softly, inexorably. You will be changed, but not lost. What you surrender will live forever. What you keep will walk forward. The sphere swelled, glowing brighter, the hum deepening until the very air shook. Elias stared into it, his heart splitting between terror and awe. He thought of his life, the loneliness of endless highways, the unanswered questions, the weight of silence. Maybe he could give them that. Maybe he could shed the emptiness, but another thought cut sharper. What if they demanded more? What if they wanted something he could not live without? His mother's lullaby. The night sky over Amarillo. Mara's face, the voice pressed again, gentle but unyielding. Choose what you surrender. The city itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Mara whispered beside him, Elias. Whatever we give, it means we belong here. Her eyes searched his. But once we choose, there's no undoing it. The great sphere pulsed brighter. Demanding, patient, eternal. Elias clenched his fists, trembling at the edge of decision. And then out of the shifting faces within the light one shape solidified. A woman's face, familiar, soft, humming a lullaby, his mother. The face in the light was unmistakable. Her hair framed her cheeks the way it had in his earliest memories, and her lips moved to a melody he knew even before he could speak. The lullaby. Elias staggered, breath gone. Mom? His voice cracked like dry wood. The vast sphere pulsed once more, and her face smiled, not a stranger's smile, but the one he remembered from nights when storms rolled over their house and she would sit by his bed, singing him calm. Mara's fingers tightened on his arm. She saw it too. Elias, she whispered, eyes shimmering. They're showing you what you hold. The voice of the echo filled the courtyard, low and resonant, like wind through a canyon. All who enter must give. Your memory is your anchor. Your anchor binds the archive. Choose what you will leave. Elias's heart thudded painfully. All his life he had clung to fragments of memory, his mother's song, the lights over Amarillo, the way Mara had stood on the overpass when she first told him about her research. These weren't just memories. They were him. He whispered, if I give you this, will I still know her? Will I still be me? The voice answered without judgment. You will be changed. What you give remains forever. What you keep moves forward. The echo does not erase, it transforms. Mara stepped closer, her hand brushing his. Her own eyes were glassy with tears. I already gave them something, she said softly. When I came here before you, that's why I couldn't go back. His head snapped toward her. What did you give? She hesitated, a faint tremor in her lips. My fear, my doubt. It's why I was able to step in without hesitation tonight. But I lost something too. I can't remember my brother's face anymore. Only that he existed. That's the price I paid. Her words hung heavy between them. Elias turned back to the sphere. His mother's face flickered, then steadied. The melody grew louder, filling the courtyard, brushing against him like the wind from an open window. It would be so easy, he thought, to let it go, to give them the pain, the loneliness, the endless restless searching. But what if he gave them the wrong thing? What if he gave them her? He closed his eyes. Behind the darkness of his lids, images flickered, the hum of his truck on empty highways, neon signs blurring past, the sound of his mother's voice. The first time Mara had told him about the media-ignored encounters that no one else believed. Every road had led him here. Every night under the stars had been a kind of prayer for this moment. And now the prayer was being answered. He opened his eyes and looked at Mara. I think I know what to give. She nodded once. Steady, trusting. Elias turned back to the sphere. I'll give you. He swallowed hard. The waiting, the emptiness, the part of me that thought I was alone. His voice shook. But I need to keep the rest. I need to remember her. And I need to remember Mara. The sphere pulsed once, twice. The lullaby swelled, a note of approval thrumming through the air. So be it. Give us the waiting. Keep the connection. Walk forward. Hold. Light poured from the sphere, coiling around him in ribbons. It wasn't harsh, it was warm, like water closing over him in a still lake. He felt the ache of years of loneliness unspooling from his chest, threads of emptiness pulling free, dissolving into brilliance. He gasped, not in pain but in release, as though an invisible weight had lifted from his ribs. When the light receded, he was still standing, still himself but lighter. The waiting was gone. The hollow ache that had followed him down every highway had been replaced by a strange, serene fullness. Mara's face lit up. She reached out, brushing her fingertips along his cheek. You did it, she whispered. He managed a shaky smile. Feels like finally coming home. The sphere dimmed. its billions of faces swirling once more into endless motion. Then the voice of the echo filled the air one last time, softer now. Like wind fading after a storm, you are bound to the echo. You are its keeper and its traveler. Walk forward. The ground beneath their feet shifted, the glowing pathways converging into a single road of light, stretching into the heart of the living city. Beyond it, Elias saw vistas impossible to name, skies of molten stars, oceans of suspended light, bridges arching between planets. Beings moved along those bridges like rivers of memory. He turned to Mara. What happens now? She took his hand, smiling through tears. Now we see what they've kept hidden. The stories no one believed. The ones we're part of now. Together they stepped onto the road. The city of echoes rose around them, not as a cage, but as a horizon opening wide. The hum of the place had changed. It no longer pressed on Elias's chest, but flowed through him. A living pulse like a heartbeat under the skin of the universe. As they walked forward, new visions unfolded before them, a field of ships unlike anything on Earth, a library carved from living light, a gathering of beings human and not, sharing stories around a fire that burned without heat. And somewhere, high above the luminous spires, the stars shifted, forming three bright points of light, hovering in a silent triangle. Elias squeezed Mara's hand. The lights no longer frightened him. They no longer made him ache with wondering. They felt like family now, watching, waiting, welcoming. The lullaby played one last time, fading into the hum of the city. And for the first time in his life, Elias felt not like a wanderer under strange skies, but like a part of the sky itself. He walked forward, deeper into the city of echoes, where the stories no one believed lived and breathed, where his story was only just beginning.